Hello, Mr. Steven Hesse.
Hello.
How do you do? How the wheels have turned.
Indeed.
Now I am interviewing you, and you are the interviewee.
I've got to go. No, but no, it's really strange because like my sort of situation now is I interview, and I've been interviewing for a while, so it's weird to be interviewed.
It's weird to interview you rather than being interviewed by you. So yeah, we're here to talk about Geek Apocalypse.
Yes,
obviously. What is Geek Apocalypse? Because a lot of people probably won't know what it is. And if you can explain maybe just the idea or the ethos behind Geek Apocalypse.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not yet. I'm not even. This came today, so I'm really excited. Basically the situation with Geek Apocalypse is I kind of done this, as you know, because I interviewed you in my old sort of podcast. If you can call it that, where I've been interviewing bands and loads of different guests for about a year and a half, and really enjoyed doing it. But there was an element of I was really sort of about 3 or 4 months ago I got really frustrated with it, and the reason why is because I really felt like I wasn't doing the subjects that I really cared about, and there was an element of I was sort of being vetoed on certain plans I wanted to do.
Right.
That's kind of the crux of the sort of practicality reasons, but in sort of the personal reasons from my perspective. I'm just a big geek. I'm a massive geek, and I've kind of just it's just come out of my shell, like it's literally forced its way out of my body, and I've reached the point where I kind of just I'm gonna have to accept it because it's been so much a part of my life. And actually, what motivated me to start it was I wrote a blog, which actually you can find on the Apocalypse website. The first blog that I ever wrote, which I now write a regular blog every week, but the first blog I wrote, it wasn't intended as a blog. I just wrote down actually kind of my frustrations and kind of like what I should be doing and about why I should be doing geek-related content. And all of a sudden, it was as if like I was writing my own sort of like map to find the treasure or something. Right. It was really like I just kind of realised, holy hell, I can do something that really means something to me, and having started it, I've suddenly realised that it's not a chore. Everything that I do, I realise that like when I'm doing something or I'm paying something towards me being geek, it's like, oh great, I get to go and I get to do geek content.
It's kind of weird, isn't it, that like for so long the whole concept of being a geek was something that people kind of like resisted or kind of like really played close to the chest, but there's loads of people now just open out being, you know, describing themselves as a geek, you know, and it's kind of the whole geek sheet thing.
Yeah. Well, this actually is a company called Geek Sheet that make geek stuff in America. Now, right? There you go. Not it's a free plug, but but no, they are cool. But it's a really good point that you make because I actually mentioned this in the blog I just mentioned, and it's kind of become that format because there's really a shift happening now. And what I mean by that is that the sort of geek culture is sort of developing rapidly, and the best example of that is to do with look at the Avengers, for example.
Yeah.
If you told like 15-year-old me, which you wouldn't want to meet, trust me, but if you told 15-year-old me about if I got told that the Avengers would be over $1 billion in the box office, I would laugh in your face and say that's ridiculous. But now it's like, I mean, look at Iron Man 3, like it's such a huge market for it now. Yeah. And to me, that indicates that really the way that geek is looked at now, and my sort of motto for being a geek, is really just being interested and making you like something. Because I think, and I'm not like trying to have a sort of political stance on this, but it's just literally, I just think my sort of format for things is just to kind of look at something and be interested and decide for yourself whether you like it or not. I think there's far too many, I think the downside of the internet and the downside of this side of things is that there's far too many, it's far too easy to kind of just neglect something or just reject it and say that, oh, that's not for me. A bit like the way I describe it is a bit like looking at music. A lot of people pigeonhole themselves by going, oh, I want to just like rock, or I just want to like blues or whatever, or maybe just want to like chart music. And I just think you're doing yourself a disservice because there's so much out there, and I don't really think it's a good idea to sort of pigeonhole yourself that way. So my way, instead of having it like a term 15 years ago in regards to being geek, is like kind of you know, it was a term of abuse. It was like, oh my god, you're a geek, you're different, you're like you know, you carry a 20-sided dice, you freak. Which I still do. Yes, I'm ashamed to say. But just in case I need it, you know, you never know when you need to roll the 20. That's all I need to say. But no, it's yeah, it was a term of abuse, and I would never say I was bullied over it. So I was lucky in the sense, you know, I played football and stuff, so I was in sort of the remit of, I wasn't really attacked as you know, being bullied in that sense, because I had a certain sort of past with the fact I played football. Right. But I've seen people who were a lot more sort of openly geeky during that time, just constantly getting bullied over it, and like, how dare you like science, how dare you like, you know, comic books and various things of that nature. But now, as I say, what I think geek is basically just you know, being immersed in something and just being allowed to appreciate it. Simon Pegg said it recently, where he said like, you just got to have a child, you know, you got to like accept having a childlike joy of something, and I think that's why being part of that group is so brilliant, because there's so much.
Can you just explain a little bit what Geek Apocalypse is about?
Well, obviously, the main thing, the reason that I started doing it was for the podcast, because one of the things, as I briefly mentioned this earlier, that I wanted to do, I did a show which was more radio orientated, as I played music and all that kind of thing. The problem with me, and I know you know me fairly well, so you know this is a major problem for me, is that I find it really difficult to like kind of just go, and now we're going to play it. I just get too bored, like, and I'm like, oh, so this next song is, and it sounds weird to say this from a music point of view, but there's an element of when I was playing music that like I really wanted people to appreciate what music I was playing, because I find music very personal, and I play my own music. So there's all sorts of other reasons than that, but mainly I was getting bored with playing music during shows. So, and I found myself, like, for example, this happened during the interview I did with you, one of the old interviews I did with you and Jess, was during the interview I realised I really didn't want to stop the conversation, and I found myself going, oh, we must stop because we've got to play a song. And I found myself really frustrated by that, and I thought, well, if I'm setting this up and I put my own money in and I'm doing it this way and it's got a geek slant on things, why don't I give people the time they need to actually like get to know somebody? Because not to say that the sort of conventional interviews are bad. I watch a lot of them, and some of them are great. But the downside, I think, of most of the interviews I've seen now is the person who's interviewing, you can tell 90% of the time that they've got no interest in what it is that they're doing. And to go back earlier as to why I think geek's such an important angle is because I think I'm not blowing my own trumpet, but I think my best attribute that's helped me most during anything that I've done in my life is my curiosity and my interest. Like I have interest beyond measure. Like I'm intrigued with a lot of the stuff. You know, I'm one of these people that when I watch a program, I spend more time on Wikipedia reading about it than I do actually watching it. Like I'm like going, oh, he was in such and such, and I'm reading it, and I'm finding out more information about the person and about the program and how it was made and where it was made. I'm desperate. I'm like one of those people.
So you're like a sponge that just absorbs information.
And I get borderline obsessed depending on what it is. Like if it's something I really care about, then I'm reading about loads of it, and I can't stop reading. Like I'm in the stage of like I'm reading everything about Richard Dawkins at the minute. It's brilliant. And so that's my current
So that's why you keep phoning me all the time.
yeah. What are you up to now, Robbie? Richard Dawkins. But no, so in terms of the format for the podcast, it's at least an hour. I mean, roughly, I'm averaging now. I've done 10 now. And I'm roughly averaging about an hour and 20 minutes, I think. Roughly.
So Geek Apocalypse is mainly interviewing people.
The thing is it's funny you say interview, because I always say to people it's a conversation really, because it's very rare that I actually ask a stand-up question, and as people know, and you've been on, you were kind enough to be on the first one, was I don't have any questions in front of me, because I want it to be, I'm pleased to say, and I'm saying this isn't the format for everyone. You don't have to do it this way. But I always quote Larry King when Larry King says the best advice you ever give people is to do what suits you. So if you work better with having questions in front of you, then feel free to do it. But my format is I'm less interested when I'm reading off a sheet.
Right.
So my format is I just want to get to know somebody, and I think if you don't know them, you're more interested to find out. It's like, I'm a huge fan of Craig Ferguson from America, and he said in an interview I watched literally yesterday, where he said that if you go on and promoting a film, for example, if you go on and the person's already seen the film, he's less interested to talk to you about it. Yeah. If I don't see the film. But usually what happens in interviews is that they ask us research to watch the film before they see it. So if you've already seen it and you go, I love that scene you did, you're not really promoting the film very well, because you actually if you're convincing the interviewer to go to your film, it's much more likely you're going to get people. If it works on the interviewer, it's going to work on the people who
And for the future, ideas for the future for Geek Apocalypse, what ideas have you got? Wow.
Yeah, well, as I'm sure you'll understand, it's a really ongoing thing. I mean, like as I say, I think the first podcast, especially on iTunes, came out in like the 27th of March. Right. So we've roughly just hit about a month now of thinking, and it's going really well. I've had thousands of listeners. The idea is just to keep getting people more interested in it. Because the way these things work, the only way it makes it a viable sort of business opportunity is that people consistently, listen to it. So that's the sort of remit. It seems, based on what I can gather through the information I've got, that people are just regularly. There's a fair amount of people regularly listening to it, which is great. But obviously, I need to increase the market in that sense. So doing stuff like this, going to other markets is in terms of the business side of things, that's what I need to keep doing more of. And in terms of the future, in terms of content, as I say, we have a YouTube channel that I would like to do more stuff on. I'd like to get more people interested in doing it, because the only real thing that happens every couple of weeks, I do a board game show where I review a board game. So I've done a couple of them, and the next one's due out this weekend, which will be after you've seen this, but so it'll be on the YouTube now. But one of the things I'm going to do, if people can't do podcasting, like for example, I'm going to the Red Dwarf convention in a couple of days, which I already would have went to when you see this. But if I do 10-minute, I want to do 10-minute interviews where, like, if people, because what we're listening to a podcast is an hour and a bit long, and a lot of people just watch a little bit of it and come back to it. Yeah. So which I know that I listen to loads of podcasts, and that's how I work. Like, I go to work, listen to 20 minutes of it, and I listen to the rest when I go home. So my idea is to kind of condense that and do 10-minute interviews on YouTube. So for example, I imagine with the Red Dwarf convention, the limited time they have, I'll probably get 10-minute interviews. So I'm going to do interviews on YouTube, but I want to do original content. And the feature is, as well as I want to do I have this idea of a web series, which I know we'll talk to a little bit more detail in a little bit. But there's a web series idea that I've got. I'm just getting more people to contribute in it, no matter who they are and whatever idea they got. But I think the idea, if you collaborate it together and use Geek Apocalypse as a name and a brand, I think it makes more sense, because then they're going to get more people viewing it and interested in it. So that's kind of the idea. In terms of the podcast and live events, really what I want to do. Right. I want to do live podcasts and get actual audience participation. But that's I'm currently done 10. I think with the remit is, I don't really know what number I want to do. I mean, I'd like to do it now. Honestly, I'd love to just go, could just get 500 people to come to my podcast and listen to it. I'm like, but realistically, that's not going to happen. Yeah. Because I know through my server, I've put up the shows, that there's a wide audience, like worldwide audience. I'm not saying loads of people listen to it, but I'm saying it's not all confined to the UK, and especially this region. It's all over. So, I've got to be realistic and think that might not happen. So it needs to grow, because it needs something like a month basically trading, company jargon, trading. So maybe it's 15 maybe, which would roughly be a year of me doing it. I think then I can start doing live shows. I think that's a realistic target.
Great. So what's the current position of Geek Apocalypse? What's going on at the moment? Because I know, I've been part of your interview process. I was your first interviewee.
Yep.
So is that basically what you're doing at the moment with Geek Apocalypse, just focusing on interviews?
The podcast. It's funny, because ever since I started doing this on my own with the sort of Geek Slams, I think the benefit of doing it with a personal slant is you get more people interested in it, just by the fact that it's clearly obvious you're interested in it. As I said earlier, I think that's a really important byproduct of doing this. But I realised that in order for it to kind of work, especially if you're doing internet-oriented things, you've got to kind of branch out in multiple areas.
Right.
The podcast, because the podcast, strangely enough, is kind of it's kind of took care of itself. I'm booked 3 months in advance, which is kind of freaky to say, because I remember at my old show when I was doing it for somebody else, like I was literally ringing people up going, please be on. And now I'm like getting people going, oh, we got space to be on your podcast. And
That's
it's a really good sign, yeah, that people have like, I've heard people have been doing this. In terms of what's coming up, which kind of intertwines with your question. For example, one of the things I want to look into is to do live events. Like for example, I'm hosting an O2 Academy gig in June with some friends of mine who are in a band called Lee Paul Band. They want me to host the event, so I'm going to be doing interviews with the band beforehand. And it's stuff like that that I'm interested in. I want to go down that field in terms of live events. I don't know what number it's going to be in terms of the podcast, but like I said, I've done 10, and I do one a week. Currently it's a schedule. Which is easy to do, but I really want to do a live podcast, like an actual event where we do it live in a venue and get people to come and do an audience, because that happens in America all the time.
Yeah.
And it's really good because it flows better, and you obviously you've got the motivation, as you know, being a performer, of like you can adhere to the audience, and people can ask questions, and it's a little bit more free flowing, and I'm really intrigued about doing it that way. A bit like a Comic-Con type scenario, where you get like a cast of people, but I get like people I know or people I don't know, and get them, you know, on one table. So I really want to do that, but I don't know whether or not my inclination for that is that I want to do it maybe on the 50th show, maybe I'll do it as a special, because I want to gather enough audience. I think if I did it now, I think we would get enough people interested in going to it and make it worthwhile. But I want the podcast to kind of to settle first. It's still in its sort of infancy stage, where you know we're sort of in the trimester period. It needs to sort of blossom first before it gets there. So it's, so that's one side of things. The other is we have a YouTube channel that I want to do original content for, because we're doing like 10-minute interviews with people when we don't do any podcasts with people. Yeah. But I want to do original content, and something that I've had in the pipeline for ages, as I just mentioned earlier, is a web series that I really want to get done. And the guys who are filming this Easy Spy Productions, I'm going to get to do a budget report because I want to do it on Kickstarter. And the reason I wanted to do this is because when I left university, I applied to BBC. I wanted to do a BBC production job, and I was really close to getting it. It took about 3 or 4 months to happen. And one of the exercises they get you to do is to write a sitcom, write a pilot. Right. So I wrote a pilot about a year ago, and they really liked it, and I got through to the final stages. And it was literally just pick who they think is worth getting it. And I got down to the final 10, and I picked 8, and I could make it. So that was obviously really disappointing. But I thought, well, you know. To me, it seems to me that I can write, and I've been writing forever. You know, I'm 25 and I've been writing for a long time. I do guitar stuff and that, and it's just been lying there, and I've not used it. So, and I really want to do it, and I really like it, and I think it's called Looking Forward to Failure, because it's about kind of how hard it is to be a writer and kind of be acknowledged as one when you're trying to like discover your craft. But there's loads of people who, especially when I've started doing stuff I'm doing, it's a bit like when you start just like Geek Apocalypse stuff I'm starting. Occasionally I get people who go, well, why don't you just like go and work in a post office and get like a check every week?
Get a proper job.
Yeah, that's exactly the phrase they use, and and the thing is I am prepared to know that it's going to take a while for this to take off for me to make income out of it. But you know, this sort of stuff excites me because this is really what I want to do. Yeah. It's kind of like, you know, if I ever get paid for something in regards to Geek Apocalypse, I turn it around and go, well, I don't really, it's a bonus. Yeah. Because I'm so enjoying the stuff that I'm doing. You know, and the other things that we do, so there's that on the go that hopefully will be done, I would say, in the next couple of months. Cool. As I say, I'm redrafting it currently at the minute, but I've got people. You know, there's certain people looking at it.
So is this sitcom going to be something in connection to Geek Apocalypse?
Yeah, it's going to be on the YouTube channel. Okay. Cool. So as I say, it's the idea of doing original content, because there's been web series that, like, you know, that it would be wrong for me not to say, like, the stuff like The Guild that Felicia Day does and all these other stuff in the web series, but again, in all USA oriented ones. I want to do something that's adheres to the UK market. So there's that. And also, really in terms of geek content, in terms of being more geek orientated, I'm going to conventions. As I say, when you see this, I've already would have been to the Red Dwarf one. But also, I'm going to UK Expo in Birmingham at the end of the month, which is a board game convention. I'm also going to NERG, which is a retro game thing, which is in Gateshead in June. I'm also I'm in talks with going to a Belfast con towards the end of June as well, which is about RPGs and video games.
And is this to interview people?
Yeah,
and stuff like that?
It's basically to go to conventions are perfect for me because they're the format to go there and go, wow, these are where my kind of people go.
This is where your people roll.
Basically, I go with the t-shirts, and basically go, would you mind being interviewed for something for like board games, like Steve Jackson games, and go to huge board game makers, make zombie dice, and Munchkin, and all these great games. Shaky is another one that I really, really like. So like, I really like to talk to him, for example, but even other stuff as well. So that's the idea, is just to go there and to provide that, because again, that's another area where I think there's not enough people promoting what happens at conventions, and that's what I really want to do.
Okay, actually. For letting me interview you, Mr. Hesse. It was lovely to chat to you as always, and it's always a pleasure to gaze upon your beautiful face. So thank you very much.
Is that actually going about the LHP?
It's a cigar.